Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
Welcome back, everybody. We are once again with Babe. I hope you caught last episode, which was Con Shelf 1. If you didn't, go back and watch that one because it lays the foundation for everything we're about ready to talk about here with Con Shelf 2. And with that, let's hear it, Babe.
All right, howdy. We're here for Conshelf 2. So, again, I'll say the Conshelf Station projects were experiments developed by Jacques Cousteau. He had the backing of minerals and oil and gas people. I'll say people, companies. These projects help lay a foundation for modern day commercial divers, astronauts, the training they do for them. There were environmental underwater experiments as well as human, psychological, and physical experiments. These experiments were performed during all three of the Conshelf projects. The results from those experiments are still used today. So Conshelf 2. Conshelf 2 was not in the Mediterranean. It was in the Red Sea. They moved everything to the Red Sea, but the main habitat of Conshelf 2 was at 32 feet. The difference with Conshelf 2 is it was a much bigger project. It was almost a town. I mean, they when we talk Sea Colony, this would be the Conshelf Colony because they really made it a lot bigger. It consisted of two different habitats. So the starfish habitat, that's probably the most popular, and I hit on that several times. It's probably the most recognizable underwater habitat ever because even here in the on this side of the world, because when you Google anything like that, that's kind of like the first thing that comes up, even though America's done several of its own habitats. But the starfish habitat is quickly, easily recognizable. It was set at 32 feet, and then there was one that was set at 92 feet. It was a vertical cylinder, where Conshelf 1 was a horizontal cylinder. This is a vertical cylinder, and it was the deep station. Again, the Calypso was sitting above, providing all the needs for both habitats. When I say I think there were 5 people in Conshelf 2. 5 or 6 stayed there, and 2 people stayed in the deep station. Oh, so when I say it's the most recognizable, one of the things that I always imagine is what if they had kept that thing, whether running completely as a station, but at least upkept it enough to keep it from deteriorating and kept it underwater even or above water. To me today, with the way the internet exploded information, people were able to just look and see this stuff. I think it would have been a great tourist attraction. So
yeah, because I was thinking about that too when you were saying that. So we look at that's what they did with Jules. They took La Chaloupe and turned it into something else. If somebody had done the same thing and taken a Conshelf and renamed it whatever and made it underwater hotel of sorts, I mean, think of the amount of people you could get in there first off, or just the it'd be like pristine. I mean, that would be like the elite place to be going to stay underwater. I'm not saying anything against Jules, but it's at least double, if not triple, the size of Jules probably too. So
that's so in Conshelf 1 when we've talked about it, I said it was much bigger, and that starfish setup was much bigger. I don't know, was any of the insides of any of the other habitats as big? Because I don't think they were.
Yeah. I don't know about the square footage on that, but I would be, it'd be hard to say. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, because it was, when we're talking this, especially the day and age that it was roomy
Mm-hmm.
compared to the others. Um, so, um, 30 days. They stayed underwater for 30 days, and that was a record then. No one had ever stayed underwater that long. So they took the information from Con Shelf 1, and, I'm betting they used some of the information from Man in the Sea, too, and stuck their people underwater for 30 days. Um, any food supplies, everything was brought down from the Calypso, as well as your everyday needs, your power and air needs for the habitats. So that brings us to something we've talked about before, and we didn't talk about when we were talking about tektites. Your favorite is
Tektite.
Okay. Tell me why.
I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I mean, I get where you're going. Starfish is a beautiful layout. I really like it.
Yeah.
And logically, it probably should be my favorite from the design elements of it. But there's just something about Tektite. I don't know when I look at that thing. I don't know. It's beautiful. I can't explain it.
I understand. There's what did you know about Tektite before Starfish Conshelf?
Probably not, because like I said, with growing up on Jacques Cousteau, that's all I would have known at the time. So it wasn't until the 90s when I found out about Tektite, when I started really diving into, no pun intended, into designing an underwater habitat, and started researching what's been out there and stuff. That's when I really started coming across. Now, maybe I saw it in a book or something like that in high school or elementary. I don't know, but yeah, no, it was definitely Starship. The Starfish House was obviously the first underwater habitat I remember.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because I was wondering, because that's still just my favorite. And I think it's because it captured my imagination when I was so young, and I think that's why it's just remained my favorite. And then of course learning the differences of room and the way each one worked. The cool thing about Tektite, though, if you look at the two, a lot of Tektite stuff was built into it that Calypso was providing for this stuff.
Right.
So it's a give and take as far as that goes. But that's had that in there for us to talk about, just because we definitely see it differently for that aspect. And I think it's funny.
Absolutely. And I will correct you on one thing here. Yeah. You said Con Shelf 2 has two habitats. Well, it could be argued there's a third one with the garage for the mini sub. I mean, you couldn't really stay there, but it was a third structure that they put underwater associated with all this. I think you're going to get to it, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
You're darn right. That's what I was just getting ready to talk about. So that's in addition to the two habitats was the garage structure. And I haven't seen any recent videos, but the last video I saw of that area in the Red Sea, there was a part of that still standing.
Yep.
The rest of it is all gone. But that's so if you don't know anything about Jacques Cousteau, he had a mini sub. I believe it was good down to about 1,000 feet, if I remember correctly. They could dive down to 1,000 feet in it, and is a 2-man sub, and it looked like they called it the Saucer. It looked like a little water UFO, and it had its own garage there with the habitats. So that's what Brendan's talking about. Or when they were done with the Saucer for that day, they pull in under and pull it up into dry air. It was a mushroom looking thing. Not sure if that's the best analogy, but you come up inside of it, this dome, and there was air. It was an air pocket that they could work on it. They could get out in the dry. They didn't have to, get out in the water or go to the surface and get out. They could go into there go up into that air bubble and get out into the dry air and work on anything they needed to do. Because I know they did a lot of filming from the saucer. So this allowed them to move their cameras, any of that stuff, into a dry box and exchange film and stuff, because it wasn't digital then. They had those big bulky cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the saucer. So there's also a little equipment structure, and if I remember right, it's just a little triangle, elongated triangle, and I can't remember the actual length of it, but they kept equipment and stuff in it, if I remember correctly. I know the pictures actually show it. Some of the pictures do. So National Geographic magazine, and a conversation Brendan and I had years ago, when I was growing up, I checked out the National Geographic magazine from Jacques Cousteau's Conchel project so many times I wore it out. They had to get a new one. That was where I lived in that thing. I talked about the people. Some of the most famous pictures from National Geographic are of the crew, Jacques Cousteau and his crew and his wife Simone, all in Conch Shelf 2 in the starfish habitat, drinking wine, smoking cigarettes, things we would go, oh no, to today.
Who's going to smoke a cigarette in a underwater habitat? I mean,
Exactly.
your air is precious, and here you are smoking. But what? Hey,
yep,
different time.
That's right. It was a whole different culture too. I mean, just a whole different idea. It's something that I made to point out in my notes and didn't even think about it, because here recently was the women in science.
Right.
Words have left my head. We're acknowledging appreciation for women in science, and that's something about Simone. If you watch Being Cousteau, the National Geographic, I believe it is, that came out, it's on Disney Channel, or not Disney Channel, the live stream Disney. That's one of the things they point out in that, is that she was a huge part of this. She was just never given any credit because there's no nice way to say it. Back then it was a man's world kind of thing.
Yeah.
And women didn't get it, but she was the backbone of this thing, and they all acknowledge that in that documentary, which is pretty cool, because if they needed something, they went to Simone and it was done. She took care of it, and that was, so it's neat that Jacques Cousteau did not leave her out either and took her down there. I mean, I don't know what kind of person he was, but that's really cool. He didn't expect her to, sit in the kitchen in the Calypso or whatever,
Right.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be,
I'm
trying to make the point.
During that time, that was socially acceptable. So
yeah, that's it. And so it was really cool, because then you take those Tektite missions that we were talking about, and the mission that was the all-women mission, that was, it. I think there was a lot of people that needed to see that kind of thing. Yeah. It still is. But she kept so much of it running smoothly. And I just had to make a point to bring that up, because, the whole crew pretty much acknowledged, yeah, she's the one that, if we needed something, we went to Simone.
Very cool. So the Conch Shelf 2 was just the one mission, correct? It was just the one 30-day mission.
Yes, that's my understanding.
I think that's the recurring theme with all these conch shelves, is they're segmented to, I mean, a lot of money for these habitats just to be one and done.
Yeah.
And the more you get thinking about Conch Shelf 2, that thing was just amazing. I mean, it really was. I mean, you had this 4 arms coming off of the main habitat, which really look at it, it looks like a little upside. They could have done that all the way around and had so much more room. So I'm not sure why they didn't. Maybe the moon pool or something, but even then, that's easy to fix.
Yeah.
And then you had the garage, which has never been redone again. But then you also look at the modern day, and you look at Proteus, which Fabian Cousteau is trying to do. He's implementing all these things that his grandfather built into a more modern version of that. It's got the same garage built into it. It's got little arms coming off of it. And he's really taking homage to what his grandfather did when trying to build Proteus. So once more information comes out, we'll obviously have to do one on Proteus, but there's just not enough right now to talk about it. Conshelf is definitely a very close second as far as my favorite. And depending on what we're talking about, it could take over.
But with it being at two different depths.
Yeah.
So the two guys down in the deep station, they were looking at decompression time.
Yeah, because they're saturated.
And, yeah, I would love to know. I would love to know if they were able to do part of it there and then just shoot up to the starfish home and stay there for a little bit for more of it and then go to the surface, or if they had to decompress all at one place, how they did it.
And I think what's also interesting is you look at the Conshelf, and as I was saying back in the first one, how it was laying the foundation. The Conshelf one was 32 feet. Let's just see if we can even do this thing, first off. Conshelf 2 comes from, let's do 32 feet, but really go all out on the thing, and let's go saturation. And then we see that, once again, play over into what we're going to see in Conshelf 3, when you talk about Conshelf 3, how that aspect there plays over into Conshelf 3. So, he had a long-term goal on this that we'll talk about towards the end of Conshelf 3 as well. But
that's so. There was another thing about Deep Station, and you read several places that they did have some problems with Deep Station, but that was kind of the point. Let's sink some people, and see what happens. They had some problems, and so by the time Conshelf 3 come out, they had obviously fixed those problems, because Conshelf 3 we'll get to, but it was a whole different world.
It was. And so with that in mind, I'm excited to get on Conshelf 3, and I think everybody else is too. I mean, Conshelf 2, there's sensitive information out there we could sit here and talk about for quite a while, but most people know the information on that. 1 and 3 are the ones that people don't know as much about. So, Babe, once again, good talk, good episode, good information. And I hope everybody enjoys the pictures we throw out there too, because I mean, once again, you've seen them all, but it's always fun to look at. So until next time, this is it for 2. 3 is going to be exciting. We're going to have a good talk on that one too. So thank you guys. And thank you, babe.
Thank you.